Hello and welcome to Audionautic Deep Space Network, episode 140. This is the Independent Musician's Guide to Production and Promotion. And today we're talking a couple of different things. We're going to check out a very cool new synth from Polyend that is incredibly affordable, but does a ton given its price and just in general compared to most synths. This does a lot. And then we're going to talk a little free plugin because I want to cover more free things. It's nice. Like we talk a lot about all this gear and stuff like that, but it is nice to actually talk some stuff we can get that's free and I guess budget conscious, shall we say. And then finally, I wanted to talk in the round robin about our first experiences with music, and not just music, like listening to music, but music production and what got us to go down this path of learning instruments or learning music production and then getting into production and releasing music. I think this is something really interesting, and I would love to hear from everybody in the chat their path. However, my name is Sunwarper, and with me today, for right now, we might be getting a couple more guests as we go, is Frequency Control Center. What's going on?
Yeah, hey, yeah, good. Yeah, all good, thank you.
Yeah, you are resident standby.
Yeah,
you're always
yeah.
good to go. I mean, I know we were just talking about it before you came on, but it's always good to see you. And it makes it special when you do come on because it's awesome. But how have you been?
Yeah, I've been good. Yeah. Working hard and trying to get time for finishing tracks off for the album. So
Yes.
yeah.
And I know as you were saying that, we've been discussing derailing that and working on some drum and bass together. But you know, it's still
yes,
music production, right? It
yeah,
still counts.
we definitely should do that. A bit more drum and bass. It's good for the soul.
We're definitely going to do it. I think
Yes.
in the new year we'll do it. I think we came up with a good idea where you'll come up with the genesis, like a literal drum and bass loop. I'll live stream adding stuff on the DAW list, then send it to you. You do whatever you want with it, and then we'll just mix, master, and release it. I like that idea. That should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna do it. But other than that, you've been good?
Yeah. Just Christmas is coming round far too
Oh,
quickly.
I know. I know.
But yeah. Looking forward
Also,
to the Christmas holidays to do a bit more music.
that's gonna be nice, right? More drum and bass.
Yes, more drum and bass
Yes,
Christmas holiday.
Curtis, who should be coming in later, is in the chat and says, yes, drum and bass would be dope. Also, Eonlake
Yes.
is in the green room. He usually has some mic issues right at the start, but Eonlake, if you think you're good to go, I'll bring you in. Give me a thumbs up if you are. I can't see it with your microphone. Use the other hand. Oh, there it is. It's okay. I'm going to bring you in. Let's see. Hopefully we don't have the crazy delayed loop that we get. What's going on? Oh, I can't hear you. Are you messing with me? Yeah, there it is. I was like, I knew he always does that. And he is in the Fender shirt. Nice, man. What's going on?
I don't know. If I stopped to think, I might be able to answer that question.
Don't stop, man. Just keep going. It's all right. I also want to say hello to one of our patrons, Shady Ridge. What's going on? How have you been? Also, Smiling Errors. We went live, I think, right at 11, so you guys can't give us anything about, being late. Curtis leaves and we're on point. What can I say? I'm just kidding. Let's blame Curtis though. Like, what have you been up to, man?
What have I been up to? I've been studying music theory.
I've been teaching music theory. So what got you studying it, man?
Just trying to do a bit of a reinvention at the moment, as you know.
So this is where you've come to instead of where you were at. You want to start doing more theory stuff? Like what kind of theory are we talking about?
Just trying to do things in a different way. Trying to find different ways into music. I think it's common when you play an instrument or mess around on instruments that you develop like comfortable things that you end up repeating too much. Yeah. And sometimes I think only giving yourself a challenge, looking at a new approach, a different way of conceptualizing things is the only way to kind of break the mold a bit and try and do something a little bit differently. So it's one of the, I'm actually using the whiteboard for things to do. It's meta. It's not just like things to do in music, but it's things to do about music to come up with different ideas to use in music.
Oh my God. You lost me.
Lots of parentheses here, but yeah, disappearing up my own butt, I think, is the short answer.
Yeah, that's awesome though. Not disappearing into your butt, but working with theory and stuff like that. That doesn't sound very pleasant. That's not awesome. But the working in theory sounds awesome to me. I've been doing a lot with theory again lately, and as an unfortunate side effect of teaching more, I've been having to do a lot more with like notation and sheet music, and I can definitively say I hate sheet music. I just don't. I look at it and I'm like, why? Just why? I understand it. I get its place. It's just like I don't know. To me, it just feels like very dogmatic, and it's probably just my own perception of it. But I don't like that kind of like just reading through something.
Can't it? I mean, if you're playing in a key that's got, I don't know, 7 sharps and flats in it, you know,
like that's fine though.
Just a mash of shapes on lines.
Yeah, you just see so much. I mean, you know, it's fine. I can do it. It's okay to teach and stuff. It's just like kind of boring. It has its point. I get it, and I think it's important to teach it, and that's why I am. But I just personally don't like it. I've been away from it for so long. It was like nice to have such a long reprieve, and now I'm like, it's back. So, but it's okay. I do think it has merit.
In a nature, get away from a computer because it's a little bit, you know, clicking on things and drawing music is quite irritating. Imagine coming from a time when there was no alternative.
Oh,
it was
just writing
pen and paper, write it out, get someone to play it, then you know what it sounds like.
Yeah,
we don't know. We're born, do we?
Say? FCC. What?
So how? Say? Yeah, I'm just intrigued. The pair of you, how much music theory you know?
Again, I'm a drummer.
Oh, no, none.
Yeah, no, mate, to be honest. Just different ways of approaching harmony and things like that, and just not, you know, there's something on the board at the moment that says no triads, absolutely no triads. They're forbidden for quite a while. So I'm looking at using things like inversions and augmented chords only, and no block chords of any kind, because it's just too.
Only fourths. That's the next one. Only fourths.
Interesting intervals. I like a fourth as an interval. I really do.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. Yeah. On my end, I mean, I took a lot of piano as a kid and then hated it, but I got really into theory once I got into production. And we'll talk about this in the round robin, but I do a lot of theory. I don't do a lot with the notation and sheet music, if that makes sense. Like I love chord progressions, scales, keys, borrowing chords, like figuring out, you know, the numbers of each note in relation to a key, and then kind of borrowing, like, oh, I want to flat the third or do this and that. Mike has a great idea, though. Only fourths is the new fan site for musicians. I love it. That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Curtis, I don't know. He's in the green room now, but I'm not sure if he's ready. Curtis, if you're ready, I'll bring you in a second. He's given a thumbs up. Okay, he is ready. All right, so let's bring him in. We'll see what he's up to, and then we will. I'm gonna wait till he's done drinking his tea, though. We don't need the slurping. Okay. But I'll bring him in, and then we'll get into the Polyend Synth in just a minute. But Curtis, I thought you were coming a little bit later. What's up, man?
All right.
Your desk is empty. Your desk is empty.
It is empty as hell. Empty as hell. It's all here. It's all
no music.
It's all
so I had the repo.
You know, I always thought that was like a wall to your right. That goes way farther than I thought.
It's a whole crazy. There's a whole ecosystem of
he's dropping a little bit.
Oh,
I think he died.
He fiddled with the wrong thing there.
Let's just there he is. I knew that would he's still freezing a little bit. You're coming you've got about 2p resolution right now.
Yeah.
2p resolution.
Yeah, he's dialed in from the 1980s.
20p.
Stay with us this week.
Have I just come in
80p?
Disrupted everything.
80p.
Yeah.
You're coming back though. So what you been up to, man? How are you? It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good. I managed to get back a bit earlier than I thought, which is nice. It's been again concert season in full swing. Just finished the showcase. I had 18 kids performing with Ableton Live in the space and performing tracks that they wrote on their own.
All at the same time?
I mean, that
nice.
we had a conveyor belt system, but it was great. I'm so proud of them.
Nice.
It was amazing, and it's just
they loved it.
Bringing it in. So we're done. They did it. They performed. They're done. I'm proud of them. So yeah,
I see that hand, Curtis. Move that left hand. Get away from that tee. I see you grabbing that tee. I'm like, step away from the tee, man.
Fair play. I'll wait till I'm not talking. But yeah, it's all good. It's lovely to be here a bit earlier.
That's awesome, though.
Thank you for bearing with me. It is cool.
And so you've been teaching them Ableton, right, with Push 2?
Yeah, me and a colleague, we've been teaching them how to build tracks in Ableton and then how to then perform them on the Push 2.
That's sick.
And yeah, I'll put some photos in the Discord after work. After the show. But I'll create a whole stage for them, complete with subwoofers. They got the subwoofers, only the best.
Nice.
Yeah, and they had booths and they had their DAW projected up onto a big screen so they could see what they were doing and stuff like that. And it was a whole experience. It was really cool. Really proud of them.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah. That's really cool. Well, we can talk about that a little bit more, I think, when we get into the round robin near the end. I have to leave at 12 and I started it, so I want to make sure. I'm getting like a ton of echo. Hold on. Sorry, my mic is tripping out. Anyways, we'll talk about that more in the round robin, but that's awesome. I'm glad you were able to come early. So it's great to see you. It's great to have everybody on. But moving on from there, I think, actually, first, let's say hello to a couple more patrons. We've got Bendu in the chat. What's going on, Bendu? How are you? Okay. And Mike says, Curtis joined by his 56K modem. Hey, it seems to be stabilizing now, so I think we're good. I'm usually guilty of all the drops and stuff, and I might be anyways, so we'll see. But from there, let's go to this Polyend Synth. Now, this took me by surprise because if you read all of its features and everything like that, and I'll read a couple of them before we show it, the price tag might surprise you. So let me just read a little bit about what we've got. I think you've got the website pulled up, right? Yeah, let's show the website. So this is the Polyend Synth. Now, I think we've covered the tracker and a couple other things from Polyend before, but this is a multi-engine, multi-timbral polyphonic synthesizer and sequencer. Features 8 distinct synth engines and lets you use 3 different synth engines at once. And if you look at the little pads or keyboard bed, that's the 3 different. You can customize how many of each engine you want on the pad. Like I want this many of the pad of synth engine 1 and then synth engine 2 to be this one. So that's why there's yellow, purple, and blue. They're all different synth engines, and you can set the different keys, scale, octave, all that. So we have various synthesizing methods: granular, physical modeling, FM, wavetable, virtual analog, or phase distortion, sequencers, and arpeggiators. You can independently assign a sequencer or arpeggiator to each synth and control swing, groove, octave, range, gate length, and more, all for each one separately. Smart Grid allows for single button chords and note followers that will always be in tune, in quotes there. Polyphonic aftertouch, combo knobs, 3 brand new effects engines. There's delay, reverb, modulator that you can independently route for each synth or effect engine. Scenes, then the 3x3 knob matrix, responsive visual interface, and expandable and customizable with SD and USB accessible storage, sharing and customizing patches, effects, and scenes. It says you can expand the engines by loading your wavetables or grain files. So a ton there. Now, this is why I wanted to say this sounds like a ton, right? I was expecting 1,000, something 1,200. It's $500. Pretty cool. So let's start with the FCC because we were talking about this earlier. What's your take on this?
I really like the look of it. Actually, I don't own anything quite like that, but I quite like the idea of taking away the traditional piano keyboard and having something a little bit more performance based. I think it'd be really interesting to have a play with it. Just to set it up with the 3 different engines running and just perform something on a single piece of hardware, I think would be really, really quite cool.
Yeah, it looks crazy in that front. Just like the amount of stuff you can do on it is, it seems, the one thing I would say is it seems like it would take a while to learn fully. To really come to grips with it all. Just because, like, if we look at it, there's so much it can do. It's kind of like with the P6, right? Like they threw so much into, I have it here. There's so much into this tiny little box that to learn it all takes forever. And like the granular engine, the full like granular synthesis is this tiny button and then all these little 4-character menu things and stuff. So this one seems easier with a bigger screen and a lot of knobs and stuff, but like it's like all of that stuff is going to be a lot in there. Eonlake, you're muted, but if you're go ahead, FCC.
I was going to say it's a small screen to be able to control everything that's going on in that box. It did say on the website that the display is adaptive, so whatever mode you're in or section you're in, it adapts to what you're trying to edit. But it still looks quite small, you know. I suspect, you know, like the S1 and the P6, there's going to be a lot of, you know, menu diving to get the most out of it.
It seems like it. And Mike in the chat mentioned, and I was going to bring it up. I mean, we're all kind of talking about it, but Mike says, but some of those synths were in the Polyend play and were a bit menu divey to edit. And he had to all caps the butt. And I mean, it does seem a bit menu divey. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. It just means a lot more to learn. And if you're game with that kind of workflow. But Eonlake, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm not going to say menu divey because we've got 3 people have said that already. But
let's go for the all 4, right? Or all 5.
I got to admit, I'm looking at the screen and thinking that it's kind of functional. I mean, it shows where you're editing parameters. It shows you the value of the parameter you're editing. It just feels a little underdeveloped to me. I think they could have done more with that screen. And it could have looked better. I mean, you could have had more visual feedback. It's quite small. The writing's quite small. And the reason I mention this is because I think that one of its strengths would probably be live, right? Because it's a lot of sound, but very little real estate on top of a desk or whatever. And that would be one of its strengths, because it's not the best digital synth in the world. Some of the engines sound better than others. I've listened to quite a few sound demos just to see.
I was going to say, look at you being prepared this time. Wow.
They can be very good. I struggle with things like this because I'm very fussy about synth tones. There are certain types of sound that I just don't like. But it's got a hell of a lot of range, and most of them are pretty good, to be honest. And with processing as well, they sound even better. The reverb sounds quite usable on that box. The Elements engine that they've tweaked from Mutable Instruments sounds really good for the the plucky modeling. That all sounds very good.
Steve's like, use this as a microphone.
I just want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, and like I just want to say too, real quick, while you're on the topic of like all of that, it reminds me a lot of a beefed up Circuit Tracks, and I have issue with the Nova engine in the Circuit Tracks. I don't like its sounds, the synth sounds that are there's very few that and that's why I don't use the Circuit much for like internal sounds. This is completely different. I just to your point about the to your point about the some synth engines and stuff, I get what you mean. But this, when I first saw it, I was like, this looks like a mega beefed up Circuit Tracks. Like I also think the Digitact is a beefed up Circuit Tracks in some regards, but this with the pads, the colors, all that stuff, like it's very reminiscent of a Tracks. So I didn't mean to take your flow.
No, carry on. Cool.
I just wanted to bring that up.
And I completely agree with Frequency Control Center about having something on it. It would be daft to have a keyboard on it because you've almost certainly got a keyboard anyway. This is its benefit is it's so small. So having the pads on it. The fact I think it's the same size as what's the old one, the Play Plus. I think it's the one that Mike's referring to. It's the same size but with bigger pads. I think, I mean, it doesn't take up a lot of room. It's a fair amount of bang for buck. It doesn't sound the best, I don't think, although some of the engines do sound pretty cool. I think it's, quite good sounding. It's multi-timbral as well. So generally what that means is you start to hit the limitations of the device a bit earlier because you've got multiple sounds playing simultaneously. So I think it does. It's got 8-voice polyphony, hasn't it, as a maximum? But it's dependent on the engine that you use, and some of them, I think Granular's 1 voice. I forget what the others, but it's essentially less than 8 in some cases.
And is it 8 voices spread across the 3 engines together, or is it 8 per engine?
I think it's total.
Yeah, it might be. I'll try and take a look at it.
Yeah,
that does. Polyphony becomes an issue typically when we run into these like groove boxes and things like that.
There's polyphonic aftertouch, and I did think, is that enough? Is it a bit tight? Would I have wanted more? And then I think, well, they've done this pretty cheaply, haven't they? I mean, it's small.
$500,
I really like the form factor. It looks nice. I know. I'm not sure about the pads, but I know what the rest of those controls will feel like from their other gear. And I quite like the form factor, but I think perhaps if they'd made some of these limitations less obvious, it just would have been too expensive, and it would have sat in the wrong place in the market.
Make a Pro.
Maybe, and it's also early days. They're on. It's supposed to be a proper version of the firmware, isn't it? But it's an early version, and I think people who own Polyend devices will know that they tend to upgrade it kind of quite quickly after it comes out, and it comes out on some slightly fruity firmware. So they might be able to improve on some of this stuff. I don't know, but I rather like it, to be honest. I don't have much of a use for it myself, but I do think, if you've got that on your desk and a couple of other bits of kit, that's a fair amount of noise you can make. It's got a lot of potential. Yeah,
I think it'd be dope with like one sampler, like a Digitact or an SP, and then I don't know how when it comes to the synth engines, if they're just separate MIDI channels, but that would be really cool if you could just control it with so just with the Digitact, each you could just sequence you could sequence multiple ones with the different channels on the Digi or something. Curtis, I want to hear your opinion, but first, should we take a listen real quick to some of the sounds, or do you have anything you want to say before we get to the sounds? I've got it queued up, so you're good. Just if you're game to, if you want to just listen first and then share your opinion, or if you want to share first, Curtis.
No, hear the sounds. Let's go for the sounds.
Okay, let's do that. So here we go. We'll just hear a couple. Is it coming through? It does not seem to be coming through on my end. Are you guys hearing it?
Yeah.
Okay. Skip around a little bit.
Yeah, the FM on it's good.
That's cool. Let's go one more. Okay, so there we go. Let's call it there. All right, Curtis, what do you think?
I feel okay. Well, I mean, I have a serious comment, and then I have a less so serious comment. It speaks to me as this notion of being like not a capacitor to be able to move in that fashion. But, be able to move, it's like a composing piece, which is hardware and away from it. Seems like a similar thing, maybe a bit more geared towards the live situation, which could be useful. We seemingly appear to be entering this phase where it's like, how many synths can you get inside a synthesizer in that regard? And I like that. It's like the MERVs, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, if we're talking about real estate and we're talking about these boxes getting smaller and smaller, it seems to be a lot of bang for your buck. Definitely seems to be a lot of ability to, again, go back to the fundamentals, right? We're talking around Robin later about the fundamentals and like the origins of where we're going. Seems to be this is a nice tool to kind of get that done. It's got a low barrier to entry in that regard, only being $500, and the versatility and the customization of it, you can truly make it your own in that regard. For its price, it's amazing. I've never owned anything Polyend, but I wouldn't mind I mean, again, part of the reason I this is bare today is because I've been putting everything in spaces to take it on the road, right? And I'm thinking I've got like a certain amount of space, and this, for what it is, doesn't take up a lot of real estate space. It seems very powerful as a sculpting tool, be that something that you created before or something you can just make on the fly.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it does. I think it's major power. It's like portability and how much has been crammed in for like live performance or portable performance. You know, we talk a lot about portable setups and things like that with a sampler and a synth or something. This is like a lot of bang for your buck in that, especially for 500. I get what you're saying though, Howard, about Eonlake, about the synth engines. I mean, I think they sound decent, but there's some of them I'm like, that's not really my style. And I mean, it's an example. You can obviously customize it a bit and stuff, but it does give me some flashbacks or triggers of the Nova engine on the circuit tracks. And I'm like, oh no, please. But I don't think it's anywhere near that level. It sounds pretty good. And I think with some tweaks and then throwing it into like, you know, an SP with some 404 sim or something, you could get some really nice sound. But I think that's about everything. Gentlemen, do you have anything else you want to say about it? Go ahead, FCC.
Yeah, I've got a question for the Ableton users. There is there a playable device that's very similar, you know, similar form factor, similar pads, that you could split into 3 different synths that would link with the synths in Ableton or VSTs or that kind of thing?
Well, we got 2 Ableton users here, and I think they both have push.
I'm waiting to see if we fish Mike Smith in with that one. But
I'm sure he's typing furiously right now. If we could see
I mean,
typing, there would be Mike's 3 dots. You know, he's vigorously typing right now. I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure you can set up a split, and you could maybe use the wavetable synth, whatever that new one is in the latest version of Ableton as well, and split the push or something. There's got to be a way to do it in software, really. Because I remember thinking when I was looking at the sound demos that I was like, if I close my eyes and tell myself this is actually somebody just playing stock plugins in a DAW, I could believe it. You know, I mean, sonically.
Yeah.
And is it doing anything that you couldn't do in a DAW? Possibly not. No, it's just. It is what it is.
It's the playability, you know, it's the splitting the voices out. And if you could do that as a performance piece of hardware, but link it with your DAW and have the sounds that you want and the control that you want, so you're not limited to the waveforms that are built into the machine. You know, I kind of presume that there was something there.
Yeah. I get what you're saying, and I did think that myself. And it brought me back to the point that it is what it is, which sounds like a pretty facile thing to say, but its pros and its cons are directly linked to what it is. It's really small. It's a synth, but it's a digital synth, so it's got loads of different sound engines. It's not just one sound fits all. It's got effects in it, and they're kind of all right. But at the same time, it's mid-range, so it's not really, really high quality or anything. It doesn't have a keyboard on it. That could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. It depends entirely on what you want it for and how you're going to use it and so on. And I suppose you're taking the argument of the fact that it's quite small and is capable of a lot of different sound to the ultimate. Like, well, do you even need it? Can you do it just in your laptop? And the answer is, I don't know. I'd be surprised if the answer wasn't yes. But it's probably its benefit is in the fact that, hands-on. You can get your hands on it. You can sculpt as you play. I think it.
I mean, maybe it's the target market that it's aimed at. You see a lot of it on YouTube. You know, a lot of the kids have got these boxes where they're looping and just, quick sounds, bashing away, singing over the top. For that kind of quick musical performance, it's probably fantastic.
I wonder if it's ideal like market or people who want what you can do in a DAW, not in a DAW. The customizability, but also I think its biggest perk for me at least, is that the pads and the way you can customize, like this is one engine, this is another, and then you can kind of make some chord pads and this and that. There's a lot with those pads and things. So I mean, if they're not well constructed, that could be to its detriment. If they are, which I can't attest to whether they are or not, but I think it's like getting a lot of power in a DAW-less setup. If you want that kind of like the wavetable stuff, all these different synth engines, it says you can upload different wavetables and all that stuff. So I can kind of see it's like, oh, I need a lot of power, like what I can do in a DAW, but I want it in this sort of small form factor where I can, you know, put it to with the Digitactor, with the SP, and like have a lot of this customizability and playback and stuff in this smaller form. All right, Curtis, anything before we move on?
Nothing that hasn't already been said. I'd love to see people who do vibe with this and what they think about it and why, and if they have it. So head across it would be nice if you could like head across the Discord and let us know what you think. Because we have our thoughts, but none of us have it, and it's just a new thing. So it'd be cool to see what someone actually physically experience it will do.
Yeah, and before we move on, Sleeping State says, I do enjoy playing around percussion noises on pads rather than mouse on a grid. Not so much the other stuff. I'll skip this and take a MIDI controller with the laptop. Yeah, I get that. I don't think this is for someone who's using the DAW as their main thing. It's just like I don't think it has much use in that regard. Look at me sounding like Curtis with the regard, but you got me, man. But no, I really don't. I mean, there's other things that can do, like a MIDI keyboard can do that, or something that kind of bridges the gap more, like, you know, an Electron device, or, you know, something like that. I think has more of a point in a DAW setup. But if you're doing DAW-less or like Groovebox kind of things and stuff like that, this does seem to have a lot there, at least from what I can see and in my opinion. But anyways, from there, I think we'll move on to our community corner. I want to mention first that our next challenge is December 11th. I kept thinking it was the 5th, and that's not even a day we would do a challenge. My brain's just all over the place. But it is. I hope it's the 11th, or I'm just completely out of whack. But yeah, it is, because I didn't put it in the notes, in the show notes. But yeah, so it is the 11th. It'll be at 10 a.m. Pacific, which I am not even going to try to do the different time zones. Curtis can if he's got it. But it's an hour before we normally go live for ADSN. So we'll all hang out, listen. The goal for this one and the prompt is to take a field recording and use that as the genesis. Make a track. Use it for rhythm is, I think, what the prompt actually is. But if you want to do whatever with the field recording, go for it. But yeah, like what I'm planning to do is do rain and turn it into a hi-hat with some envelopes and LFOs and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm going to go, and then just build a little track around it. The key thing here is it doesn't need to be a finished track. It can even be a 4-bar loop or an 8-bar loop. It's just for us to come together, have some fun, and we have a listening party, and we all just kind of share what we've learned from this process. A lot of these challenges, like when we did the one sample and we all flipped it, it was really interesting to see and hear from everybody how they approach taking a whole set of samples and doing something with it, because every single song sounded completely different, and that was really crazy, and that's what I was hoping. So it was really interesting to see that. So that is this coming Wednesday, 10 a.m. So just put in your tracks before then on the Discord. The link is in the description. But yeah, anything on the challenge, Curtis?
To come down and have a lot of fun. We don't take it too seriously, and it's just about getting together for a little bit and just having a bit of fun. 10 a.m. Pacific is 7 p.m. UTC.
There we go. See, he's got me covered. He's got me covered.
Is the one. No, 6 p.m. UTC. I don't have you covered.
Oh, he does not have me covered. Look at him. He's trying to throw it. But no, you do, because you caught yourself. So you're good, man.
Well, there we go. So yeah, come on down, have a bit of fun. There is a sample in the Discord, in the challenge Discord channel from our patron sample pack. If you didn't have the inclination or the time to get one of your own, it's totally fine. This is really, we're trying to keep this as just as fun and accessible as possible. Whatever level you're at, just come down and have some fun.
Yeah. And speaking of the
Mm.
patron sample packs and all that, this show is brought to you by our patrons who support us every week and let us keep the lights on and keep doing this show. So much love to all of our patrons. If you want to become a patron and get a bonus content, additional channels on the Discord, sample packs, all at these different tiers and all of that, you can head to patreon.com/audionautic. It starts at $2, and there's a couple other tiers where you get a bunch of other perks. So if you want to help support the show, it is the best way to do so. You can head to that link and join, and we'd love to see you there. It's pretty awesome, the community we've built around that, and everybody there. And we have a lot of fun in there. It's been a little quiet the last week or two because Curtis and I have been so busy, but we're going to be bringing back our Star Stream, and the next sample pack is imminent. We've got all the samples, I think, collated and put together, or at least near. So we have to just kind of bring it all. But the next sample pack is going to be very interesting. Lots of different sounds are in that one. So yeah, if you want to check that out, head to the Patreon. But from that, I want to just move on really quickly as we're getting to the holidays. The wallets are kind of hurting. I want to talk free stuff. And I found this one. Newfangled Audio makes some really cool plugins. I previously got a free one from them called Equivocate that I basically used to learn EQ when it comes to mastering. Like, that was my start point, because it would you put a song in it and it would analyze it, and then it would put that EQ on your own track, and then you could kind of see like, oh, this is the wave, the frequency curve and slope of how they were doing it. And of course, every song has a different key and all that, and different frequencies, but it was really interesting to kind of see the shape of it and how they're doing it. Like, oh, this sounds good because the mud's taken out, or oh, they dropped the high end a ton. So it was nice to see. But they've got Obliterate, and this is a distortion filter. Now this, I was like, oh, this is cool. It's like a saturator or something. But FCC here actually downloaded it. Look at him being prepped. I mean, that is prepped. And right. FCC, you said it's not so much a saturator, right? It's something a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think they named it appropriately. I mean, it's pretty full on. Really full on.
I'm going to put a link in the chat if you want to check it out. It is free, and I think it says it will remain free.
Is it anything
Devil
like
Lock?
Decapitator from
I was thinking Devil Lock.
Yeah, that flattens and saturates.
Devil Lock is just demolishes. Do you have Sound Toys, FCC?
Yeah, do, right? So I actually put it on a track. I was working on a track, so I had like a pad going through, which I already had little radiator on. Sound Toys.
That's a good one.
Radiator.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And so I put Obliterator on there, swapped it out, turned radiator off. But man, I mean, Obliterator, it really does. It is digital distortion to the max. I mean, really, it didn't, for my kind of sound, I could not get it to work really. I mean, I was, you could turn everything down and just give it a little bit, but it was still quite harsh. But I mean, it would be fantastic on a drum and bass track. I mean, really fantastic.
Is it a bit
we can use it. Let me just read this really quickly. Obliterate is angry. Obliterate doesn't want to make your audio sound better. It destroys it. Obliterate isn't just angry. It wants to make your song angry. It wants to make your listeners angry. Obliterate wants to make everyone angry. And then this part is very interesting. Obliterate started life as a filter, but there was a bug in the code. We could have fixed that bug, but we let it fester. So I guess FCC is that it's intentionally meant to sound very, very nasty. Which, yeah, I know the sound you typically go for when it comes to like distortions, and I like too, is like that tape saturation, the tape reel, or something that's adding that warmth and kind of that a little crispiness, but just a little. But it's just adding some harmonic color and things like that. This sounds like it's just doing like some gnarly digital, just like.
Oh yeah. But it would be great, like on a drum and bass track, you could have the bass line, fairly normal, and then when the track kicks off, you could bring that in, and it would just absolutely nail it.
Who needs a respace, right? You just use that.
In fact, I'm going to use it when we do our drum and bass track.
Yes.
I'll use it.
So I'll make some stuff and then throw that on there in post when I send it back to you, and let's just see what it becomes.
Yeah. It'll be gnarly drum and bass.
FCC, since you've got it, do you know this? Sleeping State asks, is it a dual frequency filter? It looks like there's two frequencies or two filters. But I don't know. I didn't get a chance to download it. I just saw free. And
I don't know. I mean, from the sound it was making, there was definitely a lot of bit crushing and all kinds of stuff going on in there. You know, that digital kind of, you know, where you can hear the sound distort into, I don't know how you explain it, but almost like a metallic kind of weird, scruffy kind of sound.
I got you. And let's take a look. If we look at this features really quick, I got to switch tabs, but absurd over-the-top digital distortion, perfect for destroyed drums, insane basses, and horror sound design. Distortion has built-in frequency and resonance control. That's crazy. 2 destruction algorithms, too much in all caps and too most in all caps. 2 resonant multi-mode filters, morphable between low pass, high pass, band pass, all pass, and notch. Click and drag to control all frequencies and resonances at once. So yeah, I mean, very destructive, very crazy, but it could be a lot of fun for sound design, or just, like you were saying, to take basses just over the top. Anyways, I just wanted to share that. I put the link in the chat. I'll put it in the show notes if you're watching this back on Apple or any other podcasts. And if you are, please consider giving it a rating and a review if you can. That really helps just get to new eyes and ears. So if it is very much appreciated if you are enjoying it. And if you're enjoying this on YouTube, leave a like, leave a comment when it's done. That helps a ton. Anyways, from there, let's go to our last topic. So round robin, we're going to talk our first steps into music creation, I guess we can call it. But Curtis, do you want to just quickly explain for those who are new or we haven't done a round robin in a while? What is the round robin?
The round robin is our community discussion part of the show, I suppose you could say. We take a concept about within our world. It could be existential. It could be about physically producing something. It could be about marketing. It could be about anything that we stumble across on our collective path as a producer. And in this particular week, we kind of sit down and we just hash it out in the name of sharing our experiences and growing together from them.
Yeah, I like it. So let me give a little preamble, I guess, because like I said, I have been teaching a bit lately, and it's younger students, ones that are pretty new to the instrument. Some are old, some are young, but it just got me thinking, like when I started learning music, I absolutely hated piano because I hated learning the sheet music. That's all they would teach me, classical music and just the notation. So it's probably a very old bias for why I hate sheet music, and I'll be the first to admit that. But I'm trying to find ways to make it interesting and engaging. Like what I've been doing is when I'm teaching rhythm and the chord arrests, notes and this and that, like I show them GarageBand or Logic and show the sequencer and show like the pink is the kick. So we're going to do quarter notes. Then when we do the hi-hats, that'll be the eighth notes and all that. Like finding ways to just make it kind of interesting, but bring in something that kind of is fun to do rather than just like, look at this, what note is this, do that. So I wanted to talk like what got us into creating music, and then what was the catalyst that got us, I guess, addicted to making music and wanting to create songs, not just learn music, but create music, produce, got into production and all that. I'm happy to start if you want me to kind of just like start it, but I would love to hear from you guys and everybody in the chat kind of where your start point was, and then also what got you to being into production and the type of music that you make now. So I'll ask FCC if you're game to start. I'd love to hear from you first, but it's up to you.
Yeah. I don't mind. I mean, we were chatting earlier, and depends how far you really want to go back. But I remember growing up, and we always had a piano in the house when I grew up because my mum and dad always used to muck about on the piano, and then we changed the piano for something smaller. This was like probably late 80s, and got a little synthesizer.
Oh,
And
cool.
I think, it was really cool at the time. And I remember, I can't remember the make of it at the moment, but I remember looking it up recently, and they go for an absolute fortune, these things nowadays.
Wow.
But back then it was like the most amazing bit of kit. But it wasn't really until I got my first guitar when I was about 17 that I really got into trying to make music. And all I had was a guitar. And again, this was late 80s, a proper ghetto blaster. And all I did was record on cassette and then blank over the tabs and the playhead and just almost like multi-track and keep recording over the same bit of cassette to make songs.
It's beautiful.
And that's the earliest thing I remember. And actually what I do now is not that dissimilar, to be honest.
I was going to say, so is that what kind of got you into the workflow where you're at now? That's like the last bit of this I wanted to discuss.
Yeah, kind of going back to that a little bit. Yeah, I mean, you can, like that side there, that's the 4-track cassette player up there on the top. Yeah, up there where my thumb is, that one.
Yep.
So yeah, kind of going back to that. And I actually think somewhere up on the shelves up there, I've actually still got some of the cassettes from back then, which must be 30, 35 years old probably now.
Time to sample a man and flip them.
No, they were bloody awful.
That's why you flip them. You just flip them. You don't need to release them as is. You take them, chop them up, and do something with it.
I mean, some of them were just like, I remember one. It's just like whale. Do you remember Whale Song? Like way back, like late 80s, early 90s. Every song had Whale Song on it. So it was just, there's a track with Whale Song and then guitar, like delayed guitar. Delayed to like everything up full over Whale Song. So yeah, pretty basic stuff back then.
That's back when studios had really big live rooms.
And a big whale.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Okay, so that's awesome, FCC. I appreciate you sharing that. I do want to mention I have to drop at 12. It looks like because I accidentally dropped, it can stay on. So if you guys want to stay on, go for it. But we've got some minutes left, so let's just keep that in mind as we go. Eonlake, but we'll go to Eonlake next. Eonlake, what about you, man?
I learned to play drums as a kid. You're never going to get far playing them on your own, so there were always other people involved. And then we thought, well, obviously we need a band, and everyone did a little bit of crossover in writing stuff, but that eventually led to me working in studios engineering, and it was really learning how things were pieced together there and being taught the tools of the trade. I was always a complete technophile. Anything, any gadgets and gear and anything musical always appealed to me. The fact that all of this stuff would be dragged together in one place was just, it's like a magic land for me. And, so it was a combination of learning production techniques and track laying and doubling up tracks and, all the techniques from miking techniques to recording techniques. There was a bit of sequencing going on at the time as well. And the studio had an OBXA in it that sounded amazing. Ooh. And an old DMX drum machine and some other bits and bobs that I did mess around with in what little spare time I had. And by the time I left there, it was like, if I don't have this for myself one day, I will not have lived my life properly. I'll be a failure. The idea was always to get things like that at home so that I can live among them in my happy place forever.
I love that.
I think it was just inevitable, basically.
That's cool, man. And is that what got you into making the music you make, that engineering?
Yeah, I kind of thought I had a lot of knowledge about, how to make music and shine it up and mix it and master it and everything. But I'd always been working on other people's music. So the idea was to think, and also being a drummer, I'd always written music with other people because I needed other people to play it as well. So yeah, I was kind of curious what would happen if I did it all entirely on my own. And that's kind of what Eonlake's all about. And
I'm glad you tried it because it's awesome.
I'm glad I did as well, because whatever came out, I had a lot of fun doing it.
There you go.
It's a journey that I didn't realize when I started it that it would probably never stop. But that's a good thing, because it is about the journey. It's not about the destination.
Dropping bangers with that one. Jeez, man. Got me thinking now. I like that. We need that on a t-shirt, dude. All right, Curtis, what about you?
In a similar vein, really. I was in a band during my teenage years, and it was good fun. We played a lot of classic rock, and then my guitar teacher gave me an interface, just a 2-input, and I was like, "Oh, what can you do?" And then and through that, I moved away from rock and kind of started experiencing electronic music, mainly the music of John Frusciante, to be honest. And I was just like, whoa, okay, so there's a lot here, and you can just, sit in your room and make weird sounds and be expressive and vulnerable. Like, whoa, cool, all right. And then from there, I quickly created a project and just started doing some really weird but cool things with what was it? Mixcraft, I think it was Mixcraft back in the day.
Google it. I'm not familiar.
It's old. I think it's like Windows native or something. I don't know. I can't
Acoustica
remember.
Mixcraft 10.5. Innovative DAW for music creators. That's what they're calling it. 2004 was its first release. Wow.
I remember making music on the Amiga.
Oh. Yeah.
So that's going back.
That's going back.
That's going back.
Going back,
Showing my age.
No, but that's how we all do it, right? We just kind of like stumble into these things, and that's how I did it. I just kind of started plucking guitars. It's weird. I think about it now because I told you last week about the latest track, which is about 120, 130 tracks. Whirlwind was the first track I ever wrote, and it was 2 tracks, a guitar and a lead solo over the top,
and whale song.
Should have done that.
There's a running theme here.
So yeah, that's how I got into it. And then I had another project before Curtis came along, and it was just kind of it was kind of in a similar vein to Eonlake. It was like, this works. This is fun. Life is better with this. Definitely should not do this. So let's just keep doing it.
Why isn't everyone doing this? This is awesome.
This doesn't suck. Let's keep going. And then here we are, essentially. X amount of years later, and now I have an addiction to buying synthesizers and talking about production. So it's better than most other addictions, got to be said. So that's me. How about you?
We definitely have a conversation about bands we used to be in. That would be a good one.
That's another round robin. Yeah, because mine was a metal band, man.
I've been in so many. So many.
Yeah,
I like that to the docket. I like that to the docket for and then just a hashtag for whatever.
Yeah, I like that. While you do that, I'll go in mine. Before I get into the Genesis, though, I do want to mention, because we're talking first tracks, so I don't forget, the first track I ever recorded was on Audacity. I recorded guitar, and then I didn't know how to do the drums or anything, so I had we used to burn CDs, so you'd have like a big tray of the blanks, and it would have like a little plastic thing. So I put some keys and that thing, and I was just hitting that to do like drums, and then that was the song. And I added all this delay that was destructive delay, in Audacity the effects were like you'd put it and it would burn it into the track, and so the guitar was just like loaded with delay and all that. There's this recurring theme we all seem to have where our first track is like a guitar delay and then like one other track doing something. So it wasn't whale.
It's the only way it sounds good is to load it with all the effects you can get your hands on.
Yeah, exactly. but yeah, so the first steps for me, my parents made me take piano when I was 6 years old. And I did it, but I like it worked, but like I was good at it, but I never wanted to practice because I hated it. Was just literally like read this, play this, and then it was all just like classical music. There's nothing like fun about it, you know? And then I stopped, and then my brother got a guitar when I was, I think, 10, and I was like, I have to play this. And then it just clicked in my brain. First track I learned was Brain Stew from Green Day, the power chords. It's like a chromatic run, so it was super easy. And then kept doing it. And then I took lessons under a jazz guitarist, and he just was like, let's like we learned some music, like we learned a lot of music theory, but it was a lot of ear training, like listen to songs, learn the songs, then just like starting to solo, learning scales, and then improvising over things and stuff. And that I think was like the genesis. Then I got into metal, so I started playing metal with the guitar and did a metal band, and I loved ambient though at the same time, and so I got into like post metal type of stuff, and then because I loved ambient in college, I got into more synth stuff. So I got into like EDM and house, and I wanted to find a mix of the two. Like, could I find ambient and like synth, you know, like that? And I stumbled on Boards of Canada, and that was it. Then I was just like, when I heard the Campfire head phase with the guitars that were all warped, I was like, everything is coming together on like my musical journey. Like the distortion of metal is the saturation, right? You know, and then like all these other things, like destroying these live instruments and doing all this electronic stuff. I was like that. So I had to learn production, and then I got into that. So that was the way I got there. But yeah, so that it's just interesting to hear we all have like different ways of doing it, but there are recurring themes I'm noticing here of like things of how we got excited into wanting to do it more and stuff like that. So I appreciate everybody sharing it, and we've got some chat. I will read them before we go. I think this is really interesting to kind of reminisce and think about it. And yeah, as I've been teaching, I'm trying to just find the ways to keep it interesting and, you know, make music exciting and stuff. So it's good to hear everybody's way of like how they got to be so stoked on music, basically. Let me read some chat. So I see the cat. Sleeping State says learning guitar would not be popular if they taught it the same way as they teach piano. I think self-taught opens up music composition in much more original ways. That is a really interesting statement. I think you're right for sure. That's like when it comes to piano, because I'm teaching guitar and piano, I don't want to teach it the way I was taught it. Like I'm teaching the theory and the notes and stuff, but I also want to like get right to playing. Like the first thing I did was teach arpeggios of C, A, G, A. So they're playing like a song, a chord progression, and it's like fun. And then yeah, I think guitar is a lot like the tab books. The first thing you do is the Jaws theme, which is just like instantly fun, just hammering 0, 1, 0. Like it just gets you right into it. And I was like, why do we not do this for piano? Instead, they're like, wiggle your fingers and then do this. And that's like, no, let's play some keys, man. And then we've got, where is it? Smiling Air says, I've just realized who makes Obliterate. Yeah, new Fangled Audio. They also make Pendulate, also free, also great. They've got some really good stuff. I don't know if Equivocate is still free, but if it is, I highly recommend getting it because it's really cool to balance sounds. Shady Ridge shared a little bit. I am very interested. Shady says, Hydro Fighter and myself had a rock band in high school. We played Zeppelin, Rush, and some grunge music. We started writing and recording songs with a drummer friend at a local recording studio. And then somehow, Shady, that transitioned to like electronic music. Because I think that's mostly on Hydro Fighter's end, right? Because you're doing all the guitar stuff. But I'd love to hear, if we end before this, I would love to hear how you got to where, you know, KST and all of that, like the genesis to that. What else we got? Shady also says, we had some great ideas, but didn't know how to execute them properly.
Do now.
Yeah, you do now for sure. Yeah. All right. If anybody else wants to share real quick in the chat, we'd be happy to read them. Is there anything else, Curtis, you want to cover either in this or just in general?
No, I think it's cool that that we're so open about sharing our story, and so I think it's nice that we do. And if you want to share yours, and if you want to hear more, head over to our Discord and keep on sharing. Because I think these stories are incredibly personal and incredibly unique in each way. But I think within those uniqueness, there are common threads in which we can all kind of see a mirror of ourselves in that regard, which is really nice to see. Because again, these dialogues make it really really useful for one's own journey, especially when we are perhaps not feeling our best upon our journey and where we're at and our sense of isolation. Because what we do here, if you look at what we do, I think this is the physical representation of it. We're 4 people and we're together and there's a load of chat, but we're in 4 separate spaces and stuff. So it can be quite isolating. So to bring this together is a really nice way of doing it. So again, just to reiterate, without going on for too long, we'd love to know your origin story. Everyone's got one. Iron Man had one, and you have one too. So go ahead and put it in Discord.
I would love to hear more about people's musical history, because we span between us quite a long time. You know, those of us that are a little bit older have probably got 35 years worth of musical history. And actually, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on there.
And it's also interesting.
I'd love it. I'd love it.
I agree. That's what I wanted to talk about this. Like, it's so fascinating to hear where we're all coming from and how we all got into these similar places, I guess, let's say. But there's so much of the trajectory, like looking back, like how we got to where we are. Like, it's just fascinating to hear the different ways we did it. And like, FCC, you were in a bunch of bands, I remember you said. And didn't you do drum and bass or something at one point as well? Weren't you doing like
So I was in a drum and bass and hip hop band called Frogman in Pursuit. Yeah, that was way back. I was awesome. I was in a band. I was in bands in Oxford at the same time when the Oxford scene exploded. So Supergrass, Radiohead. Radiohead supported one of the bands I was in before they were Radiohead. My brother was a drummer in a band who supported Supergrass on their first ever gig. The Oxford music scene was incredible. I went to Cannes Film Festival because I did a soundtrack to a horror film. That's a whole episode. Talking about Cannes Film Festival, but tons and tons of stuff. Yeah,
we got to have you back to talk that one. Jeez, wow, I want to hear about that. Before we go, I want to share. We got a couple more chats. So Smiling Earth says, "I was in a." What's that? Eonlake?
You got an answer to read out. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah. I was in a rock band with schoolmates as a singer. I moved away and learned guitar so I could tell my guitarist what was in my head. Soon realized I liked writing my own music, then bought a bass, 4-track, drum machine, and Korg workstation. I only was the singer because I wrote poetry and they needed lyrics. Nice. Okay, that's cool. And then it got you to where you're doing all that crazy stuff now. And I don't mean that in some it's just like the stuff you do now is far from like rock music or something. So it's cool. Maybe you can share in the Discord how you got into doing all of the more like production stuff, because it's fascinating to see that kind of trajectory of how you got to there. Bender says, I'm at work, so I've been away. Seems like I am going to have to watch again to catch up. Yeah, well, the replay is always there for you. And then we'd love to, if you want to share in the chat or on Discord, not chat, we're going to end, but comments or on Discord, your Genesis, or what did you call it? Origin story. Thank you, Curtis. Go ahead and throw it in. And then lastly, Shady Rich says, Hydro Fighter got me into electronic music, very similar to you, Sunwarper. He played me the Campfire Head phase and Helios. That's the other one. That's what I listened to first.
Yeah, Helios.
I listened to the Helios before Boards of Canada because I was more into the ambient stuff, right? And then when I heard Boards, like the Campfire Head phase, I was like, whoa. Because it's a little more like, beat based, and Enya has some, but it's much more mellow. He continues, that totally got me into electronic ambient music as a guitar player. Nice. Yeah, see, so very similar there. That's a very similar path. Fascinating. Yeah, well, that certainly helps. Yeah.
No, I meant Helios and people like that, and especially the old Boards of Canada.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. It's been awesome hanging out with you all. Thank you for sharing your stories, and everybody in the chat, thank you. Like I said, feel free to post your story, Genesis, origin story, whatever, in the comments after this ends or over in the Discord. The link is in the description. With that, we will be back next week, 11 a.m. Pacific. Right before that will be our listening party for the sample challenge or challenge. So we'd love if you take part. Again, just hop in the Discord. And yeah, with that, I think we'll call it. Curtis, anything else before we go?
No, just much love. Thank you ever so much. It's been wonderful to see everyone in the chat. And FCC, thanks for coming down. And you got an episode with Eonlake, which is awesome. We didn't know Eonlake.
I could say, yeah. We're on.
It's awesome.
Yeah, we're on at the same time.
Pleasure is all mine.
Eonlake was like, I can't make it, and then today he's like, "What's the StreamYard?" Like, we're like, "Okay, game on."
Sure.
Yeah, well,
more the merrier. Yeah,
it's awesome having everybody here. And FCC, don't be a stranger. We love having you on, but I am going to make you come back on whenever you're available to hear that story you were teasing us with, because I do want to hear more about that. And it's always awesome having you on. So we'll talk to you soon. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we will see you next week.